you're focusing on the camera, you know, trying to go forward and trying to hold the shot steady. And then all of a sudden behind me, I'm like, whoa, just like felt it grab on the carbon fins and pull back. So you got that scraping feeling, and I've got about 3 foot in there. Turn around, and the seal's just sitting there with this big smile, just going, you know. So I'm like, right, I really don't like you blokes now.
And how did it start out? Like, what was the origin story?
Too much alcohol.
Really? Okay.
Says if God wanted us to have fiberglass boats, he would have given us fiberglass trees.
It's for fishermen. It's not for taking the wife and the wife's friends.
I think that it's a really, really pretty bit.
And then there was a blur that went by and ended up in the cockpit, as far as if I can remember correctly.
What's up, guys? We're back. It's a State of Sport Fishing podcast, and we're joined today by Al McGlashan and James LeCrone. Small intro for both parties. James will be coming on the podcast more frequently moving forward. James, I mean, how long have we known each other now? For like 3/4 of a freaking decade, like a long time.
Since I've known about your page since 2013.
Yeah, a while, a long.
And then
the first sticker.
Yeah, the reason I got so into it was because that sticker was like super cool, and I was just, man, I'm just gonna buy like 13 of them.
yeah, I'll never forget it. That's how we first. This was for Al for context. This was way back when we just had like one sticker, and that's the only thing Billfish gear was. And James supported us since that day, and we've always just kept in touch. I'll never forget, you sent me that photo of that sticker on the cooler of what was that, of the Wrapped Up in Palm Beach, and if I could, what I would do to like get that sticker again. Oh,
I tried, man. I mean, I put it everywhere in the Bahamas, and I put one in Costa Rica. I put one in Mexico, and I've asked every single place, hey, is it still there? Can I please just scrape it off? And man, we scraped them all off. So,
well, yeah. So a little intro to James. I mean, I guess one of the coolest things I would say is that you've been part of breaking the record for most amount of Billfish releases on a dead bait boat. I think that's a fair statement. What did you guys do? Like 330?
No, 308.
308. I mean, oh yeah, that's right. Back up me as 330. That's right. Yeah. So I mean, that's your freaking resume right there.
That was fun. That week, I told my boss then, I was like, all right, it's the week before the Bisbees. We caught, 946 in 4 days. If we win the Bisbees, I retire.
That makes sense. But yeah, I mean, James, you're sure for a long time. You fished the best of the best, Tar Heel, Mama C, all those guys. I mean, you've been everywhere, so you've seen it all, and you've witnessed it all, and you've, I mean, that'll probably just be the shortest answer to really describe your career. No,
I appreciate it, man.
You've done kite fishing, you've done dead bait, have you been to Australia? I don't think that's something you've done.
No, that's the only place I really haven't been to, just because I have a family now, and trying to slow things down, be a part of everybody while they're young, and have that good connection before I can basically explain to them, hey, I gotta go.
Bring them with you. Just bring them over. That's easy. Just bring the whole family.
So that brings us to Al. Since I've never been to Australia and you haven't been either, let's get a little bit smarter. Al, how's it going? Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Well, pretty much I've fished all my life. So I started out sort of fishing, and then started doing all the photography and all the magazines, and particularly, in those early days, Marlin mag and saltwater sports fishing and all those, and sort of specialized back in the early days in Marlin photography, because there weren't that many of us doing it then, and traveled pretty much all over the place, just writing for all features, and then moved into books, and then eventually it sort of came into TV, and now sort of specializing more in the underwater and all that side, and doing more documentary sort of stuff these days, and still fishing, probably gone from 200 days, probably down to about, probably COVID knocked us around a bit. I reckon about 130 days we're doing at the moment. So
that's still pretty good.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd prefer to do a bit more. The weather's been a bit like, we've had pretty tough weather. You're saying it's rough over there. Same here. It's just, we've been doing the swordfish a lot recently. So that daytime sword fishing's been good fun, but you might be sitting on shore for, 3 weeks before you can get back out and start fishing again. So it can be frustrating as well.
Definitely not for lack of wanting to.
So I'll tell us a little bit again. I guess I can speak for myself, but I'm a complete noob when it comes to Australia's fishery. Give us a kind of a bit of a rundown of what it's like as a whole. I mean, it's impossible to really talk about entire country's fishery in a short sentence. But as being out of Sydney the way you are, what is it like?
Well, give you an idea. So fishing out of Sydney. So Australia's got obviously the Indian Ocean on one side, Pacific on the other. So out of Sydney, I've caught all 6 billfish species out of Sydney Harbour. So straight out the front. So swordfish, striped blue, black, spearfish, and sailfish. Caught them all off Sydney. So it's getting grand slams and stuff isn't that rare. You get we get a black marlin run every year. So you get Cairns where the big ones spawn, which is obviously, world famous. And then you get this awesome run of small black marlin. So anything from, 15 to 100 kilos that push all the way down. And this year we're catching them at the entrance to Sydney Harbour. So you got the harbour bridge and all that in the background, and you're catching black marlin. And Jane did like this, we'd drop the kids off at school, put the boat in, run down the harbour, put some baits in out the front, catch some fish, and then the kids are allowed, Cooper, my young fella's allowed his phone at school, would send him photos while he's sitting in class catching a marlin. And apparently got told off a few times for some explicitive language that he'd be sitting on, bloody dad's catching fish. So it's pretty amazing at that end. So we get you get the black marlin run, then you get the striped marlin, which are generally sort of on the shelf, which they follow the East Australian current down, and generally you get a bit of a bite Port Stephens, but then it's South Coast New South Wales, and they're big fish. You're talking sort of average 200 pounds sort of striped marlin up to sort of 330, 340, so real big ones in there as well. And they start bait balling on the south coast there, and so and you're talking tons of bait. So, and the blacks push down as well, so you'll catch, like I've had double hookups with a striped and a black at the same time, and so it's pretty cool fishery for that. And then you get the blue marlin. Best blue marlin's probably more Queensland. New South Wales, we get okay fishing for them, like you're saying before over there. You'll get one day, you'll miss out the next day you'll get 2, but they're much more sporadic. So whilst up off Fraser, you can get some really good bites on them up there. So, and then of course you got the West Coast, which is a lot harder to fish because the continental shelf's a long way out, but the best place for it is Exmouth, where it comes in. And a mate that fishes there, Eddie Laylaw,
Eddie's there, right?
Yeah, he's a good fisherman. And it's all these canyons, the shorelines, all these massive sort of mountain range, and it just goes straight into the water, and it's just straight off the edge of the reef there. You got lots of little blacks, you got sails. That's probably the spot for grand slams as well there. And you get your blues, and they've started catching a few swordfish there as well. And the only one they haven't really
surf too.
Yeah, it surfs good, but the problem is the only thing we got here is bloody sharks. They keep biting you. So we had another guy got eaten down in South Australia. I think yesterday he disappeared. So we got the sharks have been getting real bad in recent times. So I've noticed it jumping in and doing the underwater filming that they used to leave you alone, and now they're just coming up and getting in your face a bit more. And so it's certainly changed. It used to only be the surfers that got eaten. Now they're eating a few spear fishermen and stuff as well. So it's certainly changed a bit for some reason.
So casual, just eating.
Yes, I was about to say he's so casual, just saying. Yeah, it used to be just surfers that would get eaten, but now it's spear fishermen too.
Dude, it's so funny. You hear about Australia, it's like the land, spiders the size of your foot, snakes, this and that, but it seems to me like the ocean's just the same.
Dude, what?
We got the snakes as well. You got snakes that will always. So we got, out of the 10 most deadly snakes in the world, we've got 8. So with the taipan, or the eastern brown, which is the most deadly, I was doing years ago. I was deer hunting and doing a radio interview, and I'm sitting up on the hill, talking on the phone, glassing for deer, and I'm like, chatting away, going, the fishing's been really good. We're up hunting at the moment. Oh shit! There's this great big snake comes up, And I'm like trying to get up and move while I'm talking on the phone going, oh yeah, pretty good at the moment, just trying to move around. It's flaring up and carrying on. And so yeah, but it's not too bad. You learn to live with it. You know, most of them, you pick up like a black snake or something like that. They're only, I think they're 8 on the list or 10 on the list. They're not too bad. You can pick them up and move them. You know, if you're not, don't give them a hard time, they won't worry about it at all.
Oh
So how's that for an invitation to come over?
Oh man, Jesus. All right, so to recap, so if I understand correctly, it's both Sydney and Exmouth have kind of a mixed batch of everything. Obviously Exmouth's on the west coast and Sydney's on the east coast, correct?
Yep. So all of New South Wales. So Sydney's obviously the centre there.
Yeah, I have the map in front of me right now.
Yep. So it's pretty much all of New South Wales. That continental shelf is normally about 15 miles out, and it comes right into at times there down on the south coast about 10 miles. So it's really close and drops straight down.
Okay.
And then up into Queensland, as you hit Queensland there, it starts to branch out. You've got Fraser Island and then the Coral Sea and the edge of the Great Barrier Reef, and that pushes it out. You still get really good fishing. You've just got bigger runs. So you get the black marlin run up there, and the top end of Fraser, you get this amazing fishery for black marlin where they all go up in the shallows, and you're talking 2-3 meters of water in the sand.
Oh wow.
It's
And
like
that's
fish
that
marlin.
point, so right
Yep.
above Cairns, more towards that point there.
No, so down towards Brisbane there. So Fraser Island, you'll see sticks out on the Sunshine Coast. The top end of Fraser there is where you see the little every what's that, our springs that'd be your autumn
I
over
see.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, put them in there. And you're talking in water that, like I went to film them one day and we got this little black on, and I went and put my fins on, I went to jump in, looked over the side, took my fins off and walked over to the fish. Like, you know, we're running aground catching. It's like you should be catching permit and bloody bonefish, and you catch a marlin on the floats. And the guys that do the fly fishing it's the only place I know that they don't tease them in to get a bite. So they sight fish them, see them on the top, cast across, and they're super aggro. They're only little fish, but they're super aggro. And it's really weird because they're all up on the sand, up in the shallows. You've got deep water all out through the bay there, and yet they all sit right up in the shallows. Like, it's a bizarre fishery that no one seems to understand why they go in that area. And, you know, they're on their way down. We think that maybe the top end of Fraser Island, they get split in the current and some push in and just sit there. But yeah, it's just odd. They just don't know what they do. But then the fishery that started, I mean, if you want to go tuna, this could go on for days and days. You know, we've got the southern bluefin tuna which have come back in such massive numbers. So they're mainly down sort of Tasmania and Victoria at the moment, and South Australia, and they're building, and they come up the east coast as well. Then we've got the yellowfin, you've got big eyes, and of course the swordie fishing, which is, you know, all opened up with that deep water. You've got Bass Canyon, which is down basically between Victoria and Tasmania on the eastern side. So it's one of the biggest submarine canyons in the world. And yeah, and fishing that it's like a Jurassic Park, you know. The biggest that we've caught out of there that they got was 940 pounds so far. So solid swordie. So that's the second biggest ever caught in the world, from memory. So yeah.
What about Southern Australia, Adelaide and those places, and then between that and Perth?
Yeah, so across the bottom there, you'll get the southern bluefin tuna.
Okay.
You get a lot of white sharks down in South Australia as well. So that's where all the tuna farms are down there for the southern bluefin. But it's a lot harder fishing down there. If you come back this way across towards the Victorian border, you got Port McDonald, and then on the Victorian side, you got Portland, which is where called the Bonnie Upwelling. So you get blue whales in there, you get a lot of bait balling, and it's all bluefin. But what's really interesting, like it's cold water down there, is every year they catch dolphin fish.
Really?
And it's only 16-degree water. So like it's real cold water, and they caught them again yesterday. But all the bluefin, so they spawn in the Indian Ocean up towards, up past Exmouth, pretty much up there. And they come all the way down the west coast. And when they get down to sort of past Perth there, they split, some cut across the Indian Ocean towards South Africa, and they're never seen again. They all get slaughtered on the high seas, the poor buggers. You know, the foreign fishing fleets just decimate them. And the rest come into, and it's quite interesting. I did a full documentary on it because they were extinct when I was a kid. So we'd fish for them and never, ever saw a bluefin. And now they're catching 200-pound bluefin in Victoria, South Australia, and Tasmania.
Off the rocks too, right?
Yeah, off the rocks. Yeah, so they catch them right in. So in Tasmania, you fish literally on the rocks. The only problem is there's about 10 billion seals living on those rocks. So the minute you hook up it's beautiful big, 250-pound bluefin, 3,000 seals, and they're so switched on now. They just sit and wait until it wears out, and then they come in. And Tasmania just gets absolutely, to get a fish in without a few teeth marks in it is just, it's rare, unfortunately. It's bloody frustrating, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of catch and release. You can't really let them go because the seals get them every time. So it's this sort of, you can let them go in Victoria and New South Wales, but down there it's a tough gig. You get one, finally get it to the boat, and if you don't drag it in the boat, the seals just rip it to pieces. So yeah, it's
Wow. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? We're usually dealing with sharks.
Yeah.
Not gonna be dealing with seals.
Yeah, we dealt with that a little bit in Cabo, and I dealt with that a little bit in Ecuador and in the Galapagos. And I mean, it's crazy the way they hunt them there, though. They round them up, get them all the way into the reef until they're cornered up, and they just destroy them. It's crazy.
Yeah, they're smart creatures, that's for sure. So
Wow.
and there's lots of them. There's definitely we might be losing a few fish species, but we're not losing out on breeding up. And we got two types. We got the sea lions, which are in Western Australia, which are really gentle and nice and love swimming with you, and they're great. And then we get the fur seals, which are aggressive and give you a hard time. Like I've jumped in on a few bait balls, and you try and film it, and you might have a mako or something floating around on the edges, but the bull seals give you a harder time than the bloody sharks do. Come up and bully you and carrying on and giving you a hard time. You're trying to film marlin, trying to film striped marlin. The striped marlin nearly always come and have a look at you. But when they do, these damn seals come up and bully everything out of the way and try and, show their muscle in front of you. Like, get out of the way, you big furry ball. Move over, let me have a crack at film these marlin. And they're always pushing it around and sneaking up behind you. And I've had one bite me on the fin. I'm sitting there absolutely jumped about 3 foot in the air because I'd seen her shadow a couple of times on the edge of the bait ball. And I thought, oh, I wonder what that is. I don't mind if I can see the sharks when I can't see it. And I know there's something floating around. And you're focusing on the camera, trying to go forward and trying to hold the shot steady. And then all of a sudden behind me, I'm like, whoa, just like felt it grab on the carbon fins and pull back. So you got that scraping feeling. And I've jumped about 3 foot in there. Turn around and the seal's just sitting there with this big smile, just going, So I'm like, right, I really don't like you blokes now.
You get all types of fishery there in Australia, from what I hear. I mean,
Yeah.
you're looking at balled up bait, fishing on the edge of the reef for big blacks, fly fishing for all types of billfish on the flats, just regular fishing right outside the harbor. That's just crazy, man. I mean, you got so many options.
Yeah, well, a new fishery that starts, we get a lot of yellowtail, so yellowtail kingfish, and we've been filming them for the new series we're doing right up the river into Western Sydney, so right up past the harbour bridge, and they're feeding on little jelly prawns, but they're doing it right up on the bank, so they're pushing the jelly prawns up onto the shore, and you're only talking, they're not big kids, they're sort of, a foot or two long, they're only little guys, but they're pushing the bait right up, so they're literally beaching themselves. But they're doing it where people are walking their dogs or watering their garden in their back. Like people are scooping them up little landing nets, and we're filming these things and they're smashing these prawns, but you're literally hooking them up in people's back gardens. Like it's insane.
That's crazy.
Well, it seems as if catching billfish along anywhere in the United States nowadays is harder and harder every year, whereas in Australia you catch them in the harbor.
Yeah, but
Jesus.
I reckon we got to look after it though. We definitely like our kingies and stuff, or our yellowtail, the big ones. Like we used to get them like New Zealand. Get big meter-long fish on a regular basis, and they've really dropped down in recent years. So we still got to do a lot more to look after our fisheries. I reckon, like anywhere. Our big key is we haven't got the population. So you think Australia's the same size as the US roughly, give or take. And I mean, most of it is inhospitable country anyway. It's all desert country. But you've got, I think, 25 million for the whole of Australia. That doesn't even
You
fit in
serious?
New York, right? Yeah,
That's it?
20
That's
yeah, that
so
must-
Florida is 23.4 million people.
Yeah, so that number, so the whole of Florida across the whole US. So when
Let
we
me
fish,
fact check that.
I just looked it up the other day
26
because I was comparing Costa Rica to Florida.
so yeah, I reckon it's 26 mil.
All right, 21.78 million people live in Florida.
Yeah, but
How
that's from
many
what year?
people?
That's from 2020, right? 2019.
That was 2021, and then in Australia, you're right, Jesus Christ, in Australia, 25.6 million people. What the hell?
Yeah.
But we're all
That's
mad keen fishermen. So there's lots of fishermen and lots of mad keen fishermen and hunters in Australia. So like we fish, that Bass Canyon I was telling you down there in eastern Victoria where we fish for the swords and all that. It used to be an area that you couldn't access. So there were no boat ramps. So we all use trailer boats here. So there's no marinas or anything down there at all. And it used to be, there was nowhere you could launch your boat. And it used to be like trying to beach launch it off a beach and just get bogged. You can't do it literally. And they put in a boat ramp down at Malakuta, which is the far eastern corner, like that southeast corner of Australia, put in a boat ramp there. But if the swell's up, you can't go in and out at night. So there's all these little sort of things, that like you just get smashed to pieces. So it's restrictive. So, but as they open up more areas, we're able to access. And we're doing all this in, 6-meter trailer boats, so 20-foot boats.
Yeah.
And you run out 40 miles and fish these grounds, but everyone's putting the technology in. They've all got the latest and greatest from Faruna and stuff that, I remember years ago, everyone had like a little $1,000 unit in their boat now. And in a trailer boat, we're having to change our dashes so we can put more electronics in.
Yeah.
So we're waiting till I can put an Omni or a sonar in there so we can, once we do that, it'll be next level.
Yeah, it will be a matter of time. I mean, Anthony is here in the back company. He's coming on Thursday. I mean, he's put an Omni sonar in a 28-foot blackfin, I think, 28 or 32. 32. I mean, at the LNH, I think. I mean, at this point,
33 LNH.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just a matter of time before someone puts in a trailer boat.
But it is. It's interesting, and it's one of those things that, like, the technology plays a massive role. Like, so the other day, we were down chasing chasing yellowfin on the south coast, and we'd get a lot of them where they're chasing sauries, so like little oceanic gars, and you'd race up and cast stick baits into them. And there's big fish in there. Some of the guys got fish up to sort of, I think 70 kilos was the biggest. What's that, 150, 160 pounds?
60,
160 something. So, and we're racing around with those, and the bite had slowed down. And I'm spending all my time looking at the bottom and saw a bit of bait on the bottom there, and 300 fathoms, went, get the sword gear, let's do a drop on this and have a look. Dropped the sword bait down. That got tapped as soon as it went down, went, oh, something hit that. And we put an electric down because we've been running an electric to see what bait is on the bottom to try and, if we can learn and go, that's how it's marked up, that's frost fish, squid, whatever, that we catch something on the electric and start trying to work out what bait these swords are sitting on down there. But if you find bait, there's a chance of a sword. So anyway, dropped down, sword bait went off, and then the electric went off. So winding up the electric had two massive, we call them ling, which are these sort of big eel-like things they're good eating. That comes to the surface, then that screams off because a mako's eating those on the surface. And we're worrying about that. Turned around, looked at the sword rod, went, that's come up way too quick. There must be something playing with that. So got a sword on the sword rod, got a mako they were trying to distract the mako because we're satellite tagging the swordfish at the moment. So we're trying to get the mako out of the way, distract him with a ling, get the sword up, get a tag in him, get him back and let him go. But it was all because we saw it on the bottom with the technology. You're trolling speed at the bottom in a trailer boat and go, oh, there's the bait there, So, yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely improving, or it's definitely changing, that's for sure.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that stuff, because I mean, I don't know about you, James, but I've seen in so many videos on YouTube of people crushing it on those trailer boats. And I've always been in awe of just how, right? Like, for my first question I had, I've always wondered this. You guys back down like 6 knots on like a 17-foot trailer boat with a 70 horsepower Yamaha on the back. How? Do you not get like engine problems when you're 40 miles offshore, when you've you sink that boat in reverse? Like, how?
That's one thing I learned about Australians is they got the biggest balls in the fucking world.
Yeah, we push it hard with them. Oh, they'll be all right if you depends on your air intake. Some of the older ones, the air intake didn't work too well when you start pushing back. So especially the big striped marlin and stuff like you can get, because we're very numbers oriented, that you can get them really quick, especially if you're bait ball fishing or something on the south coast. So you get, particularly down there, you get a double on, on striped marlin, and they're both, 120 kilos each when they've been feeding up on the mackerel and all that. And if you go back quick on them initially, then normally you'll get them really fast. So if you just got to be on it quick before it wakes up to it. And like we've had one, we raced up beside him, grabbed him. We just, do the leader. So we designed so the hook just snaps off the hook, so there's nothing left with the fish. We tagged them a bit now. Unfortunately, that sort of dropped away a bit, but we just let it, do a quick release. And if you do it quick, it's amazing how fast you can get them. And yeah, you do need to keep an eye on your engine and stuff like that. Like there's a couple of blokes that have flooded them and stuff, but they're not too bad. Like my Merc will go, you can put her underwater a little bit. She might need a snorkel now, but she'll be right. She keeps going. So she's a year old now. It's got 1,400 hours on it. So, and it's still punching along, so yeah, but it's all trailer boat fish. And some of the weather we fish, like you're saying before, if we know the fish are there and it's rough, particularly when those bluefin push up the coast. And if you ever want to do record fishing for southern bluefin tuna, when they come up the coast, fish up to sort of, I think the biggest they've got, the record's 170 kilos. You catch them really fast, like 100 kilo fish, you can catch in 15 minutes, like a tuna, like just straight to the boat. We don't know if it's a hot water or if they're just feeding on something different. You can get them up real quick, and you can tease them up. So if you're trolling along, you get the bite from the bluefin, you just start throwing sardines out and you'll get them. They call them blue dogs because they literally come up the back of the boat and just sit there. And you might have a school that's, 5 or 6, 7 ton of fish, and they're all, up sort of that, they can be 80, 100 kilos. I had one day I jumped in with them and all the fish was sort of that, in pounds, they'd be sort of 150 to 250 pounds. So I jumped in, and you never race over to them. So when you get in the water, you always just sit there beside the boat, just literally hold on to the boat, let yourself drift out a bit, then come back to the boat. So never, just do it very softly. And within half an hour, the bluefin will they'll swim around with you. So the guys started chucking a hookless popper out, and these massive bluefin would come up smashing it on the top while you're sitting, like we're trying to film them in the water and stuff. And their wake is pushing you around like it's insane. And the guys are catching them and the boat and chucking the popper. It's just like, oh, yeah, it's the best fun to be in the water for that.
You got the Australians are wild, man. Sharks eat surfers, and that's normal. And then, flood mercs and, rest in peace to Yamaha engines 40 miles offshore, but it's all good. Still trucking along.
Yeah, exactly.
What the hell?
I thought guys in Florida, were crazy about like, it's blowing 35. Let's just go. If it's blowing, we're going. That's our motto here in Florida. But you guys take that shit to another level, man.
If it's blowing, we're going, and we're flooding center console. Not even center console. Trailer boats is a different thing. Going backwards. Oh my god, that's awesome.
When they bring all the American boats out, they're all too wide for our 8 and too big. Like you guys get to tow. Your version of a trailer boat compared to ours is awesome. I'd love to be towing one of those things around, but we couldn't even use half the ramps for them because all our ramps are just like our boating facilities are pretty crap in Australia. And yeah, they're only small boats. Like mine's I got a 6.5 meter. That one you fish, 40 miles offshore with a single engine all the time. Like not even a question, You're fishing, if you're doing blue marlin or bluefin tuna, the sword grounds, like we run 38 miles to the edge of the canyon where we fish. The problem is down there, it's quite often really rough to start, and then it calms out in the arvo in the afternoon, and you can just sit there all, like it takes hours to get out. You just get punching out there, finally get out there, try to get your baits down. And if it's too windy, because you're only in a small boat, you can't drift really well. So it's not that useful. It's got to be calm to catch swords as a general rule. And so, so you get out there. I've had days where we've got out there and just gone, oh, come on, waiting for the wind to calm down for us because it's still blowing, you're sitting there going, come on. And then you've got to get back to the ramp. And if there's a swell running, you can't really go in at night. Like at places like Malakuta and that, you can't see over the breakwall. So you got to have someone on the shore stand there, go, right, yeah, wait for this wave, go, and then scoot out. Because otherwise, you go out, you turn around, just bang, straight into a bloody, 10-foot wave. It's like, oh, and you can't come in at night because it's not lit. It's all pitch black. So you drive it in, trying to look and see where you're going and making sure that,
Yeah, you guys have a little bit more dangerous. Like us in Costa Rica, we always had a panga or something. The Pacific's different. It's flat calm, super easy. We don't have boat ramps. I mean, I think in the whole country there's 2 boat ramps. And we were just, all right, there's some lights over there. There's some shore. All right, just get ready. When that thing bounces, we're all just basically going to run off. Just
perfect. I like that.
straight up onto the beach and jump off with the inertia. And sometimes you eat shit. Sometimes you don't.
Yep, I like that.
But let me ask you something. When you go 40 miles on a trailer boat, and I'm gonna keep hammering on this because it's ridiculous, it's crazy to me. You just gotta have your motor in tip-top condition. Like you gotta get that thing serviced because right?
Yeah, you're servicing it all the time. The biggest probably issue we've got now is because the engines are so, like, you can't fix an engine like the old days. You could fix,
Oh, that's right.
On the water. Now it's all plugging a computer into the damn thing, and the biggest issue we've had in recent times is a sensor failing. But you go into limp mode. So we were fishing down. So what you do is when you get a really strong southerly push up the coast, so a strong heavy front like a buster coming through, you fish right into it because you get in sort of in the autumn months, you get a really good striped marlin bite. So they'll all, when the front comes up and it goes from 0 to 45 knots in the space of 10 minutes, the whole day until that hits, you'll get a really good bite off the marlin. So what you do is you fish from the north down. So as soon as it hits, you just scoot back up to the north and get into port before it hits you too hard. And we were fishing, we'd been catching striped marlin, and all of a sudden alarm went off on the engine. And I knew because a couple of mates fishing down went, oh, this is a good one. She's coming through pretty hard. And we were just near Montague Island, and it hit Montague Island, and we're in limp mode, and it hit Montague Island at 52 knots, and we're doing 3 knots.
Jeez.
We're just like, and we had to, initially I turned around and pointed into the current towards home, which was 17 miles, and went, oh man, that's like 3 knots. And then turned around and pointed back to one of the other ports that was inside us, but I have to cross a bar to get in there into, and I'm like, oh, I can do 4 knots. And then I'm calculating low tide, work it out when it's going to hit us, and got in. I mean, we got in on it, but you hit the bar, you want to run, like this bar kills a few people, and you
Again,
need speed
the mellow
Casual.
people.
You hit the bar at like 4 knots and slow down to 3 knots, 2 knots, 1 knot, just going, oh God, please no waves. So yeah, but that was probably the roughest, that one. And we even pulled the outriggers down and just tied everything down because when it hit the boat, the whole boat swings over at like, 60 degrees, it's leaning like that. And we're sitting there just and luckily because it was blowing so hard, it was blowing the sea flat. So it didn't pick up really quick, like it was building, but it was coming through so hard, it was knocking the tops off the waves. So yeah, it was a long trip in for that one. And then luckily where the bar sits, it's just sheltered. There's a little headland on the southern side there. So it was just a little bit sheltered, and we hit it right at the bottom of the tide, and it just flattened out just as we went through. And then within half an hour, it's back up to, like roaring and just, bloody horrible. But yeah, it can be tough, but you got to plan your fishing around those sort of things too. I mean, we still got 4 striped marlin, so it was a good day. We'd finished by lunchtime, so biggest
average day in Australia.
Yeah, so it was a good day, So, but those little blacks have been, like, you can fish anywhere because when they're at the heads like that, at Port Stephens this year, Scotty, one of my mates, for his season, got 270 black marlin. Wow. And he's fishing inshore every day. Like, you're fishing in 20 fathoms of water, like, 40 meters, just literally
how far out is that?
3 miles, 2 miles there. It can be a mile at blazes, and they're only little fish, but the little blacks just jump non-stop.
Acrobatic as well.
Yeah, we had one jump in the boat this year. We drive around, and he jumped and done his normal thing. I thought, he's slowed down. Now we're going to pick him up and let him go. go over to him. He jumps up straight without, because the problem is the little ones are the worst ones because you can't see when, like a big black, like an 800-pounder or something, you can see it's like a semi-trailer moving, it takes them a while to get up. These little ones, they're there in one boat, the next minute they're on the other side, and this thing came flying up over the side of the back of the boat and landed across the gunnel in the boat, and then Keeps, my young fella's trying to push it out with he'd been fighting him a Stella. He's trying to push it out over the side of the boat. And then the dog, we've got a Kelpie that's just always wants to be in the action. So it's barking at this thing. It's waving at the bill, and we're trying to push the poor thing back over the side. Odds, my better half who's trying to film goes, I'm going to leave that to Cooper. I'm bailing up the front out of the way. This Marlin's kicking around and carrying on, put him back over the side. And then he starts jumping again in the water after landing in the boat. We're like, come on, mate, seriously.
Everything's crazy in Australia, man.
Oh, yeah, and that was right at the
Question
front.
for you, Al.
Oh, yeah, we'll have to come over. We have to go and put the kids on. We'll just get them to wind up those little blacks for us. They're too dangerous for us.
Man, it's crazy. I just wonder, obviously you fish a lot, right? So I kept looking at your page and, photography for me, especially sport fishing and marlin photography is pretty epic to be able to know when you're going to get that shot. How's it going to come out? To have that timing right without like what we do, because me as a mate, I'm always looking at what the fish is doing. Everybody's always like, man, why don't you got a video? I'm like, man, I'm too concentrated on watching this beautiful beast jump in the air. So I'm wondering how you focus so much of your time into, taking the right picture at the right time. How'd you really get into that?
Well, the funny thing, you'd appreciate it because when we were really in the early days, like God, 30 years ago now, when we were fishing Bermuda on the south coast, it was all tuna in those days, all catching yellowfin. No one really knew how to catch marlin. And I saved up money, went to Hawaii and learnt to troll for blue marlin. Of course, came back for striped marlin. Nah, lures don't bloody work. They all fall off all day long. You hook them, that's great, but you spend all day with them falling off the side. And we'd caught a couple of fish and we'd let them go because, especially with stripes, they come up, they're just neon lit up and we didn't want to kill them. So we'd let them go. Yeah, exactly. It was lit up, the fins are up and we came back to the boat ramp and this old crusty bloody ramp rat of a bloke was there and he goes, how'd you go, boys? I went, oh yeah, we got two marlin. And he looks at us and goes, where are they? And I went, oh, I didn't kill them, mate. In those days, everyone put everything, everything went to the boat. And I said, oh, mate, we'll let him go. And he goes, you didn't catch him, and walked off. And I'm like, hang on a second, what the? Oh, that's it, I'm getting a bloody camera, that's it. So I got a camera, and in those days, it's all film. It's not bloody digital. Like I had to use slide film. So I started taking photos, trying to show, particularly because you tell someone, it's like, this striped marlin was at the back of the boat. He's swimming beside us. We're trying to picture him a bait. He's lit up. He's literally glowing. And people are going, oh, yeah. And you go, no, you should see it. But you try and explain it to them and they look at you and you just get mesmerized. They're like, oh, yeah, it's just a fish. So that was that initial motivation to get more and more, and particularly in those early days, getting those shots of the marlin jumping. Back in those days, there was only probably 4 of us doing marlin photography, and I used to send the slides over to Marlin Mag and all that, and they'd go, yep, we're doing this one, this is a cover and stuff. But yeah, and it was that motivation, and that's what ultimately motivated us to get in the water to go the next one. So we started doing the top water, and then the next thing's going, no, I want to get in and film this in the water and show what, like that stripe, back to that striped marlin again, he's sitting there, he's glowing. I want to film it in the water. And these days, all our fishing now is almost all about getting the shot as opposed to like catching. We used to go out and get, good day, get 10 striped marlin. Now we get 3 because we're trying to get the photo or trying to film it, or even these days we've been trying to tease them and then jump in and just film them and just see how long we can keep them entertained around the boat to get the shot, and then you come home and go, oh, we didn't actually get a fish today. So it's like, hey, the new one, there was a day there the stripes were going off, but the light was really shit. So the underwater, it was tough filming. We just never they wouldn't come in right. And when they did, the camera, you'd have a failure or something. And it was just all day. And it was like 4:30 in the afternoon. One of the blokes goes, we haven't caught a single bloody fish. Can we just catch a goddamn fish today? We're like, oh yeah, we better catch it. We'd seen striped marlin all day. Put a bait out with a hook in it. Do you think we saw another fish for the last hour of light? Not a single fish. Went home with donuts, and everyone's going, can't believe you caught nothing. The fish were going off. We're like, my crew weren't talking to me for the rest of it. Like, we're not going to talk to you. That's it. You're out. So yeah, but I love it. For me, it's that passion to get it and to show people how awesome they are. You know, every time, whether something happens like that famous one I got when we were filming Marlin and how to release them, and then that massive mako comes up and eats it. You know, it pushes me out of the way and eats the Marlin. You know, if you saw that, you tell people, go, oh mate, this mako was massive. You know, you turn around and show them the photos. And I remember one of the guys from the news rang up and said, oh, he's one of my old mates. He said, what's happened? I said, oh, we're doing that interview. I said, I've just got a good shot of a big mako eating a Marlin. And he goes, really? He goes, what's the shot? And I said, oh, you get it from the boat. You can see me in the water with it. And I said, but my shot underneath, you see it, brace up and just grab it right next to it. He goes, what do you mean? Where were you? And I went, well, I was in the water. He pushed me out of the way to eat the Marlin. He goes, hang on, where were you? And I went, I was in the water. Aren't you listening? And he goes, are you telling me? I said, how many times do I have to tell you this? And he goes, right, go straight back to shore now. I'll get the camera crew up. Wait, no, I've got a time change in an hour and a half, mate. I'm not moving. I got too much. He goes, get back to shore now. I said, no, we can't. So we stayed, caught 2 more Marlin, then drove back in. And the camera crew were waiting there for us going, show us the footage. Showed them. They went, no way. And it was just, but again, it's that thing just to show people what you're getting. And the beauty is these days is with cameras, man, they're easy. You put GoPros on your head, you know, you get all the fancy cameras, all the, you know, Canon or something like that, all the awesome gear. It's so much easier. And in the old days, I'd go on a trip, you know, shoot everything and sit there with rolls of film, come back, get them processed and sit there with my little eyepiece looking through them all. Now, I just look at the back of the camera and go, oh, I like that one. It's so much easier and so much better.
Yeah, but for you to be that motivated to do it back in the day with as much work as it takes, you know, to be able to go through all that film and all that to now, to like you said, it seems easy now.
I mean,
But
you
at
heard,
the same time, in my eyes,
you
it's
heard
not
it,
easy.
James. You heard, I mean, you heard it back first. There was, I mean, right now there's video it didn't happen. Then there was photo it didn't happen, and before that it was killed it. If not, it didn't happen. So evolution.
Yeah, it is. And also too, because, you know, for us as fishermen in Australia, we get with greenies and like the sort of environmentalists, we always seem to be fighting. And I sit there going, fishermen as a whole are really good custodians of the water. They want lots of fish. It's pretty simple. So you get a few bad eggs that just, you know, treat them like crap, but the rest of us are doing everything we can to change. You look at marlin fishing, I started using a big J hook, and when we let them go, you know, let it go with a 12-0 stainless hook going, oh, it'll be all right. Like you look at it now, live baiting going, what the hell was I thinking? Now we're using little 9-0 bloody eagle claws, perfect in the corner. We're stat tagging them to make sure they're surviving. You look at how far we've evolved as a community, trying our best to, you know, and we're doing all this for fun. Don't get, like, it's not doing it for work or anything as a majority. And we constantly get locked out. Like there's always marine park lockouts here. There's always something going on. And I sit there, and that's one of the motivations these days is not only to capture all the cool things on the ocean, but to show what we do. Like we went down and filmed at Malakuta. So it's a 7-8 hour tow down there. And then we're fishing every day. So it's the fuels was $2.30 a litre, and it's 40 miles to the ground. So every day you're using out and back, say 500, 600 litres, $600 worth of fuel. Go and drive them down there. It ended up working out something like $5,000, fished 3 days, kept one sword to eat and tagged one and let it go. You volunteer all that just because you want to learn more to do it. And yet we never get any recognition as fishermen, and it seems anywhere, for all the stuff we do. And it really frustrates me that we put all the time and effort in to try and do our bit. And if we had more sat tags and more, we'd put more effort in. And yet then you get, oh no, we're going to block this fishery up, we're going to close that, you know. And but we're not going to do anything about the high seas where they're absolutely flogging the living daylights out of everything, you know. So yeah, I find that incredibly frustrating from our end. And that's one thing I want to film with the new series Fish Forever we're doing, is show that side going, we're out there doing that ourselves and showing what's happening. Like I was saying before with these yellowtail kingfish in the river, they never used to be up here. Yet we've still got Sydney, it is a basin, so everything flows down and into the system there. So the pollution, you can't eat fish west of the Harbour Bridge because of 200 years of pollution, and we don't do anything about it. Yet fishermen, they go, oh, we're going to lock up this area, we're going to lock up that area. It's go, why don't we look after our environment first? So that's the other thing, is really prove it for fishermen, showing that we're a major part of the solution, not the problem.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it seems to me like that's happening more and more everywhere around the world. I hear, from my friends that live in Mexico, from my friends that live in Belize, that live, in all these different types of countries, that so many places are getting closed down, becoming natural parks because of the damage that they think fishermen are causing as a whole. But especially like a small country like Costa Rica, where at least 50% of the national income comes from tourism. And at least out of all that tourism, 70% is straight for sport fishing.
That's it. And that's the thing. We were over in Papua New Guinea fishing in some real wild areas there and teaching the locals to go, what we want you to do is allow more wreck fishing operations in. It's all catch and release in those areas anyway, and it's all barbless, it's all top water and stuff, and for GTs and all those sort of things. Said these fish are worth more alive. If you let foreign fleets come in here and fish, everything's gone, and you don't get any of it. This way, we'll keep coming back, and that's renewable. And we don't get enough recognition for those sides. So fishermen open up those areas, and then we got massive problems here with foreign fleets moving into, so that the Coral Sea and all these islands around us at the South Pacific, they own massive areas, and of course they're big spawning grounds for yellowfin and a lot of the tuna species. So of course big foreign companies are just coming in and going, greasing a few palms of a few local officials, and then the next thing you know, personas are in there flogging the hell out of it, when they could have a bunch of sport fishing operations that fishing for tuna or whatever, and letting most go and keeping one or two to eat. And it's something they have to really address, and we always have to be on the forefront to go, hey, we're representing this to do it the right way. And like, no one's ever going to be perfect with it, but we know the marlin are living, so those fisheries are perfect. They taste like crap when I've eaten them anyway. So it's just things like that. It should be, they're too good alive. We want our kids to go out and see that same striped marlin swim at the back of a boat lit up like a Christmas tree carrying on. And our striped marlin around the world are depleting. We know that. So in Australia or the South Pacific's the last one where they're not, and it's just starting to edge. We started to notice the numbers are going down. So it's going to be interesting. So, but again, we spoke to our government here about it, trying to get funding to do more sap tagging to work out where they're going. Because in Australia, you've got 200 miles around water that's Australian waters. They extended it right out. And if you look on some of those apps, you can see the line from all the foreign fleets fishing right along the line. Like, it's just insane. But if those striped marlin are all swimming out there, or tuna or whatever it is, they're getting flogged out there. So we want to try and, put our bit and go, right, this is what we need to do. And the spawning grounds, we know they spawn up at the southern end of the Coral Sea there. You can fish it. Like, maybe we should be going, let's look at these fish here and let's lock down that area for a few months and give them a bit of respite so that they can breed up. But again, if we don't do the research, we don't know. And again, it goes back to what I said before, it's always the wrecks that are doing all the work trying to push that to look after them. And then the greenies who say they want more fish are giving us a hard time. I sit there going, that doesn't make sense. We want more fish. You want more fish. This is the same group, Yeah. So yeah.
No, but it's pretty cool because you got all these years and footage and pictures and knowledge about the whole fishery there in Australia, and you can basically be like, hey, this is what it used to be, this is what it's becoming, and this is how much impact we've had onto it. So it's pretty cool, the journey you've had.
Yeah, it's been amazing. But what's really interesting, and you guys would appreciate this as well, is that with the younger generation, so when I first marlin fished, it took me years to catch a marlin because no one knew how to catch them. We didn't know what we were doing, and I saved up all money to go to Hawaii and, troll big lures in calm water and then come back here to rough water and, started catching a few. The guys now, like Cooper, my young fella, had already got a Grand Slam by the age of 9. So he got blue, black and striped. He already ticked them all off Sydney by the age of 9. Like, I dreamed about that for years. And what we've got is that now with technology, with sonars and everything under the sun, these guys are a lot better at catching fish than we used to. The problem is that all fisheries are based on catch records. So even though I'm going, hey, these fish are actually getting harder to catch, people that never caught them are now catching more fish because they've all got better sounders. They know where the bite is a lot more these days. So your catch is actually maintaining, but your numbers are dropping. We're just getting better at catching them. And it's so a lot of them go, oh, no, our fishery's fine. It's like, well, no, we want it to be insane. And my argument is, I don't want sustainable. Sustainable is 20% of a fishery. That to me is insulting. I want to enhance it so that if we all go fishing tomorrow and catch 3 striped marlin or 2 blue marlin, our kids go out and catch 6. So I want it where they see more. I want it actually better for them. And we've got this thing where, yeah, and it's an ongoing argument. And we actually have fishermen fighting against you because green groups have said we're going to lock up, so no one trusts anyone else, and it sort of becomes a bit of a shit fight, really. And it's like, got the long line fleet here, like the long liners and wrecks, because, you're both, at loggerhead, because you're both targeting the same fish. A long line puts his gear through where you're fishing. It's always a fight. I end up meeting one of the guys and saying, rightio, we don't agree on stuff. Take me fishing. I said, show me what you do. And I said, I'll write up the story, and if we agree to disagree, we'll shake hands and walk away. But I can't have an opinion on what you do without you taking me out. So went out and went fishing, became the best of friends. Absolutely loved it, and realised that they weren't catching, 3,000 fish every shot. They worked bloody hard. I said, what we need to do now is get your guys and our guys working together. And while we'll never agree 100%, at the end of the day, we both want access and we both want lots of fish. So it's pretty simple. So we started doing that. Then we sponsored some of the commercial boats for tagging. So they were tagging all the small tuna and swords and all these things that when the fishing wasn't, when they weren't on a really good run, they'd just tick it away. And started doing that. And to the point where he was going to win some of the tagging. So for the game fish tagging, he'd tag more fish than some of the sport fishers. So then they started carrying on going, oh, that's not fair. He's on the water more. He's got more hooks. So I went, who cares how you catch them? He's putting them back in the water with a tag in, and we're learning from these. And then we had a great one where a swordfish we sat tagged, suddenly turned up. The tag started pinging in port, in one of the ports, and thought, oh, that's a bit weird. What's going on here? Swordfish don't swim into ports voluntarily, And we rang up, and it was one of my mate's boats that had caught the same sword and had no idea what the sat tag was. So they hadn't even taught these blokes. They had this thing hanging out of the fish. So it started a bit of a fight. Some people go, oh, see, they're catching our fish. I went, no, they're not our fish. They're both our fish. But we get the tag back. It shows that 100% survival. This swordfish, who's only a small fish, 30 kilos, is swimming off with a tag in, and he's back out feeding, and within 4 months he's on. And got it. So now we've got it where all the longliners now know every tag that you can see. So if they get one, we'll give them a reward, because we want the tags back. They're $5,000 each. We want to get that tag. We can get it rejigged and put it back out again. So for me, getting them all working together is a massive thing. And with the commercial fleet here, we've got people working together a lot better than we have in the past. They're still not all of them, but as a majority. And then when you go to government, you've got everyone on your side. So all of a sudden, because they're only interested in votes, they all say they want to look after the environment. They don't care. They just want votes for the next year. So it's an interesting scenario, but that's the one thing I've found is everyone, if they start working together and go, what do you want out of this fishery? Go, we want lots of marlin. Done. Let's work on it. So, but
everybody wants to catch a lot of fish. That's for sure. So you can all find a medium at least.
Exactly. That's it. So if we could do that going forward, we can make sure it's better in the future and stuff.
Would you say it helps that Australia is kind of a bit not smaller, sorry, has less population than I guess other countries, that helps kind of communication between the longliners and recreational guys? Because to my knowledge, that's a rare occurrence anywhere else in the world. Or just say, James, doesn't really happen, no?
We have certain, because it's kind of hard to say just because of the amount of recreational fishermen I do know, and the amount of fishermen that are longliners that I do know, that they have so much fish to go through, and they're not concerned of each other's really well-being, it doesn't ever become a problem.
Yeah, I think it is if they're fish, as soon as they're on top of each other, that's where the problem starts. But it's something that, going forward, if you get these groups working together, to me, it's an important part. I mean, God, imagine if we get some of these greeny environmental groups. Like, it was interesting. You guys in the US have, I think it's Pew, it's called, with Environmental Service. They were the ones that pushed really hard to lock up massive parts of Australia. Like, it was, and yet I was talking to when Doug Olander was using Sportfishing Mag, the editor, he said, "Oh no, they're a great bunch." And yet here, the same crowd were putting all this money into lockouts. And we argued that you can do catch and release zones, you can do all these things for the fishery. They were doing blanket lockouts, like no fishing. It got so hard over here that if you drove along with a rod with anything attached to it, I'm talking a swivel or sinker, and went through one of these sanctuary zones, $500 fine. Wow. Unless it was stowed below deck. Well, you can't stow below deck if you're in a little, 4 meter tinny. There's no deck to hide under. And to make it worse, they put the marine park, the sanctuary zone, right around the boat ramp. So you couldn't actually get out from the boat ramp without the gear. And they would sit there and book people. Like, it was just, luckily, all of them have been moved on. And hopefully the people that were instigating that are 6 foot under these days, or shark bait. But
shark bait.
Yeah.
Put him in a wetsuit behind the boat.
Get him to go surfing.
Yep. I'd take them out personally and take them surfing. Don't worry about that.
Oh my God. Okay, question for you. What's the spread like when you're fishing off those like 7-meter boats?
So I like to, some of the guys when they're tuna fishing like to see that chaos of running as many rods as they can. So when we're blue marlin fishing, we run just 3 teasers, one on the 2 on the teaser poles and just 1 on the electric, just as a squids or something like that. If it's later in the season that we swap over and put hooks in them, we run just your standard 4, but we run short rigger, long rigger, and then we run the short corner and the long corner. But the short corner is behind the riggers. So the riggers, we like to sit up close so that we get them splashing. And then you have like a shotgun further down the back, which is more tuna, but it seems to catch a lot of blue marlin. Like the blue marlin seem to, for some reason, recent times, it used to always be on the short corner. You bring it right up to the back of the boat for a blue marlin.
What's a short corner, like a flat line?
Yeah, so a flat line. So off the back 2 corners, you got short and long, and then 2 on the rigger. So we only run 4. Some guys then run a 5th as a shotgun, but we found that particularly if it's bigger tuna or a blue marlin or something, it's just bloody cast. Like the other day we had a blue marlin. We found a patch of tuna, yellowfin, caught one, went back around to get onto them again, onto the birds, and as we came in on them, blue marlin ate the short corner, which was like just a little 12-inch skirt, hit that, did his normal thing, screaming off, then turned around, of course, came screaming back to the boat, crashing and bang it, smashed through the gear, cut off another line while he's doing it. Luckily, he didn't cut off the gear he was on. It's like, bloody hell, you damn thing. And if we had more rods, and there's only 3 of us normally fishing, trying to get all the gear up, Ords is trying to film it at the same time because we're more interested in filming it. So someone's not winding rods in, trying to get the gear out of the way. And so we stick to 4, but normally 2 skirts, hard body, and then we use just like a big plastic we've been running. Shimano used to make them called Pro Squidgies, but they're now made by one of the local guys, mate. So it's just a big lead head on it of rubber about, 20 centimeters long. And for yellowfin, when they're on the souries on top, absolutely insane. They swim like crap. They look terrible and the fish go mad. And recently, the bloody striped marlin have been eating them, like eating a plastic. And it's a heavy head on it. It's like, a couple 100 grams. It's weighted. So as soon as you hook the damn thing, they're throwing that around. Like it never lasts very long with them. But we had one the other day, hooked up, started jumping and carrying on. And of course, in this late season, they're really fat. The striped marlin are all sort of well over 100 kilos. And we got him up the boat. He was fighting really weird. Comes up the boat. He'd lassoed himself perfectly around the waist. like perfectly round, and the hook with the lure was back on the main line on his top dorsal, pulled him perfectly. So every time we pulled him, we're squeezing his stomach. He's just like, no wonder he's fighting weird. He comes in the boat. I went, I don't think we'll ever do that again.
Wow.
So yeah, but yeah, that's it. So, but for a lot of our marlin fishing, it's a lot of live baiting or switching. So we get like when the bait's here, you can drive along, say, in 80 fathoms for 3-4 miles, and it's solid bait from say 30 fathoms down to 60 fathoms, just solid bait for miles and miles. Like it's, and you've got your mackerel, which your tinker mackerel or your green mackerel for you guys, cow and young, which are like a goggle eye for you guys. Then we get one called a red bait. There's leather jackets in there, and like there is millions of tons. And what we do is you drive to the edge, catch the slimies, and that's what I was saying before about with the swords. Is our key with that fishery is you're trying to look at the sounder to work out which bait, which ones are the slimies, because that's the ones they eat, the mackerel. And when you find that, catch those, and then you live bait along the edge. But you do a lot of sounder fishing because you see the fish on the sounder all the time, you know, sitting down in the bait. You go, there's one, so you drop a bait down on it and literally drop like a little snapper lead, drop it straight down and go, yep, he's at 45 fathoms, sit there, hold it at 40, yep, got him. And you catch lots doing that. So it's quite a...
Bottom fishing for marlin.
Yep, snapper, yep, bottom fishing for marlin. And like you can catch them some days, you know, you'll catch half a dozen fish doing it, all on a bloody sinker, drop it down. I had one guy do it a couple of years ago. He's letting it down. I said, just let it go down slow and steady so it doesn't wrap up your line. And he goes, oh, I've hit the bottom. I went, you're not at the bottom, mate. It's 160 meters of water. And he goes, no, look, it stopped. And I went, it's not going out. Have a look at your line. And he goes, what do you mean? And I went, it's not going out. We're drifting. It'll be going out. I said, if you wind up, I guarantee that will come up a lot quicker than you think. And he goes, he had no idea what I was talking about. So he starts winding up. He goes, no, there's nothing here. I've lost my sinker and everything. I went, just keep winding, mate. Striped marlin comes out literally 10 foot off the back of the boat as he's winding up. And he goes, oh, marlin just ate it. A marlin ate it. But no, mate, he's been eating it. He's been swimming up with that for the last 5 minutes.
He's been eating that thing.
Yeah. So we do that. So we live bait a lot for them. And then the trolling's definitely over the shelf. So blue marlin's all trolling, switching early in the season. Once the tuna start stacking up, we normally start swapping over and running. Yeah, 2 heavier skirts and one on the rigger and then one on that short corner up the back, and then a long one, which is either like a laser pro or something way at the back, and then another skirt. And that's covering that ground once, and that's fishing over the shelf, because most of our yellowfin you see in that, as a general rule, probably 400 to 800 fathoms in that area. The blue marlin, generally speaking, is sort of, as soon as you go over the 100 fathom, they like that area there, literally right on the drop off from there out. And then, you know, you see them further, but yeah, 100 to say 400 fathoms is probably normally where you see a lot of the blues. But if you find a patch of tuna, there's always a blue marlin, because we got really warm water. It's still 24 degrees out here at this time of year, 23 degrees, which it should be down to by now 20 degrees by now. Like it should be cooling right down.
That's Celsius, right?
Yeah, Celsius. So what's
Yeah.
that, 70 something for you guys?
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's, so we've had, because the interesting thing is East Australian current, which is current pushing down the whole east coast, is the fastest warming current in the world at the moment. So it's getting hotter and it's pushing further south. So everything's shifting down the hill a bit at the moment. So it's quite interesting what's going on. So we've got, where obviously the barrier reef's in trouble up there because the water's warming up and we're bleaching it and all the pollution and stuff are pouring out and destroying the reef a fair bit. But all our fisheries are going further down the hill. So we're seeing the marlin bite, striped marlin bite that used to start sort of northern New South Wales is now sort of, you know, mid New South Wales. And it you can see it actually was shifting down. Like we had more small black marlin this year than we've probably ever seen. And they were starting to branch further down. So we caught more we catch them nearly every day out of Sydney during the season. So that's that January, Feb period. Literally every day went out the front, you know, a couple of miles off the heads, catch some bait, tow them around. Some days you catch 2, some days you catch 1. We caught them every single day we went fishing for them.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're only up to probably 80, probably 80 kilos, the biggest one we
Well,
caught.
to me, a marlin is a marlin, no matter the size of it.
Literally.
Yeah, and you could see people, the ferries going across inside the harbour, you could see them, and you're fighting a marlin out the front, like it's just, I've caught one, I haven't caught one in the harbour yet, but I've caught them right in the heads. And the funny thing is, I've always wanted to try and get a shot with a marlin jumping with the city in the background so you can see the Opera House or the harbour bridge or something.
That would be cool.
The little buggers, every time you hook them, they turn around and go straight out to sea. So every time, the little bucks will always go straight to sea. So it's like we're trying to drive around in front, go around in front of it, trying to photo. Bloody things did. No wonder they jump in the boat.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's interesting how it's changing at that end. Like it's good and bad. Like things that, we'll see changes. There's definitely something happening there. But again, there's just not enough research. We need to know what's going on and so we can manage it going forward. If it is all warming up the way it is, it's like, okay, it's changing. How do we you're not going to stop it, but how do we work to better our fisheries going forward? What can we do to make sure that we maximize on it rather than, let it go. And then when it's too late, go. Because traditionally fisheries are, once they collapse, all the fisheries ministers and all that go, oh, we must do something. And then they go and impose all these ridiculous bans. They should have done, they could do little baby steps and do something early. Instead, they all pile it on at the last minute. And it's always wreck fishermen that get absolutely flogged at the end, every time.
Damn.
That's painting a good picture, isn't it?
Yeah. Wow. Certainly. Oh, man. Jeez. What about Great Barrier Reef? You said it's deteriorating, or it's not as popular?
The water's warming, so we've got a lot of agriculture up all through Queensland, and with the population going up, everything flows off. So on our east side, we get lots of flooding and rain. It's like Costa Rica and places like that. It all pours back out, and with the whole, so I think 88% of Australia's population live on the east coast. So nearly a whole lot live there. So over in West Australia, it's tiny compared. There's just, there's a lot of desert, so it's all the population's there. So you've got that intensity there, and you got the barrier reef and all these sort of things there. So there's, the runoff is happening and all these others. And to be honest, they don't know exactly. They've got coral bleaching in a lot of areas and stuff, but they don't know exactly what's going on with some areas. So we've seen our black marlin in Cairns has probably slowed down in the last probably decade. And we're not sure whether it's, are we having too much impact? Is that really the only spot they're spawning and we're all hitting them harder? Because, the fleet increased a lot and now it's depleted down. So
a lot.
There's less people fishing them. Yeah. So it used to be, I used to go up there every year and there used to be heaps of boats and we used to see, I had one day there, I was fishing with Billy Bilson on the Viking. We got 3 around the mark in one day, 3 proper fish, in a day. And I don't think 1,000, last year there wasn't a proper one caught. There are a couple of 800s and stuff, but no real ones. That a couple of young skippers call them. It sounds bad, but if you haven't killed them, it's hard to call 1,000-pound fish. It's. From what
I've learned, it's always nice if you think it's the mark and you didn't weigh it, call it 950.
That's it. Call it just under. You can call it 999 if you want, but unless you got full measurements, which you can't do with those things, they're too bloody big, in the water. So yeah, it's interesting that we haven't seen them, but again, it's the same thing. That is that being affected by the reef changing, or is that our fishing pressure? Because you're not allowed to keep black marlin commercially in Australia, so they don't fish them, but the problem is they don't catch a lot, to be honest. When they do catch them, they're normally hooked in the tail and drowned. A couple of longline mates have got big fish over the years, but it's just obviously tried to eat a tuna that's on the line and got foul hooked and it drowns. Otherwise, they just snap the gear off. But the reef has definitely changed in recent years, and it keeps coming back to the same thing. They got to put more research in, so they go, oh right, this is what we're doing. We need to change this or do that, because for us, that black marlin fishery, that should be a priority. They should be researching it. There's been no research on black marlin in Australia for, I reckon, 10 years. And yet we've got the biggest black marlin, like the epicenter of black marlin. Like we were over in Western Australia last year, satellite tagging them out of Exmouth because we're trying to work. We don't even know where they spawn over there. We've got no idea what they do. So you'd think that surely we should be putting more money into these going, right, we know black marlin are spawning here, so this is the area we need to, look after them but we just don't do enough research that even in small places like Australia where you have smaller populations, the high seas around us is getting flogged. So you want to make sure that anything we can do to ensure those fisheries, but yeah, we don't spend enough on research. But then maybe that's because we haven't got enough population and we're not, rich enough to be able to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, every country has definitely its point of views and things and priorities that they do first. Everybody, same thing in my country. They're going through a big law right now where they want to make the sailfish the national fish of the country and not be allowed to be caught.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Costa Rica wants to do that? Not even, but I mean that you can still release them, I assume, right? No.
They're trying very, very hard to not even be able to catch them.
But then, what the hell?
Everything would be gone. I mean, there would be no reason. So, a bunch of people, including my dad and, a bunch of guys that are really in it, commercial guys and everything, because they stopped the commercial side of it. Like you've never been able to kill a blue marlin or a sailfish or anything like that unless you're a commercial boat. But they just completely took it away from commercial boats as well about 7 years ago. And they're finally enforcing it they finally started enforcing it last year when they realized the amount of numbers that tourism did bring into the country.
Why? Yeah, but then why would they consider banning sailfish releases even if they know if it's quantifiable how much wealth sport fishing brings to the
because
country?
of all these Greenpeace and companies that come in and say, this is what sport fishing is doing to the fish and this is what it's affecting them, and they're trying to get actual numbers, but I mean somebody that just comes in from the outside was never going to know numbers unless they're out there every day.
Yeah, and that's the problem we get. So it's interesting. It's the exact same thing we get, that they step in and go, oh, we need to protect it. And they come in, what we found is they come in really, really hard, go, right, we're going to shut it down. And then when we get a win where we go, oh, we're allowed to go fishing 5 days a year or whatever it is, we go, yeah, we won. It's like, no, we didn't. We lost 355 days, they come in really hard. So it's interesting. It's the exact same thing they do here. They come in and go, we're shutting down fishing along the East Coast. And you go, no, you lock out, you lose areas and think you end up winning. And it's like, hang on, our tourism is based on releasing sailfish. That's the whole thing. Surely we should. And that's where it goes back to the same thing. It's going, we need more of that data that they go, rightio, we've sat tagged, I don't know, 500 sailfish here. Our survival rate is 98.27%, that you go, well, no, they do survive. And it's because we always get the thing where, oh, if you let it go, it dies. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It does if you hook it deep. It does if you get shark. There's always a mortality, but it's a 90% that they're all good in most fisheries when the fishermen look after it. So yeah, it's interesting. It's the same thing everywhere, isn't it? These green groups, and you probably find they're funded by bigger operations that come in and they go straight in. Like when I've been in Parliament going down to see all the politicians, all the greenies are there in there lobbying the whole time. And like you're one fisherman going in, you're in and out. And these guys are in there constantly just going, oh, you need to stop that. You need to stop that. So yeah, it's a worry.
Yeah. Jesus.
I better come to Costa Rica before they do that. I want to catch a sailfish in Costa Rica.
No, my dad's doing everything and anything he can to stop that. I mean, he's been there since 91 and, he's seen it from when it was as its glory days to, to where it is now, where everybody wants to be a part of it. A lot of people have done it, and
of course, but there's no infrastructure built around it. What about Mr. Royster and Los Sueños and all those dudes? Like, I'm assuming
Mr. Royster's also doing everything he can.
I'm sure
in order to be able to protect that, because he built, the dream, in his words.
Yeah.
He built the epicenter of what I say is probably the most comfortable place so you can drive in to go fish and catch as many fish as you want.
Oh yeah.
and he built that 20 years ago. Well, 22 years ago now. I mean, I grew up there. A bunch of people really rely off of that. The entire town of Herradura
And
relies
Hako,
on
yeah.
that. There's thousands and thousands of jobs, indirect, sales and restaurants and everything would collapse.
Yeah, it's funny. It's the same thing all the world over. They just did the survey here to work out how many people go fishing in Australia, and it's 1 in 5 adults that go fishing.
Wow.
Like everyone goes fishing, and the funny thing is that you still have people trying to do that, like trying to shut it down instead of going, hey, what we want to do is we want to spend, they're investing shitloads of money into stopping us fishing when they should be investing that money into research on the fish and going, right, we've learnt this about the sales, if you use a fine gauge 7.0, your survival rate goes up, 90%, whatever it is, go, right. So what we're going to do is you can't run J hooks, you can't do this, you can't do that. That's what they should do. Instead, they just go, no, we're going to make it the national fish and block everyone up. It's like, really? Like, just frustrating that I want our kids to be able to go out and catch fish, because it's that hands-off approach that seems to be that the people go mad. Like we jumped in on a massive sunfish the other day, like it was half a ton, it was huge. And it swam off, then turned around and swam back to us. And my young fella Coops is giving it a scratch on the head, and it's sitting there rolling over. And anyway, filmed it and showed it to you. You know what the greenie said? You're not allowed to touch them. It came to us. You go to, yeah, so you get these idiots going, oh, I can't believe you interacted with it. And I said, there's no aggression. It came back to us, and it was probably scratching the bloody, the parasites off from him. He's going, this is much better than a bloody seagull, getting a kid to do it for us. And
right.
They give it a hard time. Like I said, they're going, no, you should be embracing this. You're not interfering with it. It's dictating whether it wants to interact or not. Now, you can't do that. You people are all the same. I'm like, it just never ends with them, So it's a worry, but it seems like we have the same problem all over.
Ridiculous. Well, that's why there's good people like yourself and James's dad that kind of fight to make it better for the next generation.
Yep,
I mean, if it wasn't for you guys doing what you do in order to try to keep the fishery going, we definitely have a trouble just in our generation.
Yeah.
I'm amazed how much it's changed in our generation. It's gone from where you just go out to kill them to where you let them go and do the right thing and get flogged for it.
Ridiculous. Well, Al, thanks for coming on the pod. I feel like we got to do a part 2, a part 3, and a part 4 because there's just so much to say. I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface. I mean, I have so many things that we still got to discuss, but I mean, that's for another pod. I mean,
anytime, boys.
Come back.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an awesome to talk to you and pick your just wealth of knowledge. Really cool.
Maybe you have to shut me up a bit more often. So
No, absolutely not. All right, well then we'll be in touch. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure to kind of subscribe to our podcast. We do them twice a week now, so please tune in. Al, thank you for coming on. Really, really appreciate it, man.
Boys,
thank you, Al. I appreciate all the knowledge, man. Makes me want to go there now.
Yeah, right. I know, right? Like, why do we run freaking 100 miles in Ocean City and flat at Costa Rica and do all this stuff, pay crazy amount of fuel? Well, we can just
when we can do it at the harbor in Sydney.
Do it at the harbor and a trailer boat, and while looking at like tourists wave at you from a boat.
Yeah, all right.
What are we even talking
Thank you, Al.
The best part is you drive out, you get your photo with the harbour bridge and the opera house, and then you drive out, and then we'll go and catch a marlin or something out the front. Bloody perfect.
Sign me up.
Bloody perfect.
Anytime you want, boys, come and crash here and we'll go for a fish.
Let's do it. All right. Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.